Hello, I'm the Grove Street Lodger, and this perfectly tranquil greeny colour behind you is the same wall you've been looking at the beginning of all these videos, because I have done it. I now have a bedroom. I'm sitting on a bed. Here's a photo of it. What's more, here's a photo of my living room. And my dining room. Amazing what furniture does for a place. I'm now really beginning to settle in, and my house, who I've nicknamed Jane, after Calamity Jane, is a bit less calamitous. She's now looking pretty sweet. This is a really lovely, peaceful room. It's not over yet. I've got someone coming in to shelve a bunch of alcoves so I can really start getting books everywhere. And then I've got a team of people coming in and sort my kitchen out. So yeah, and then I'm going to stay for the bathroom, and I've got to sort out the garden, and there's all sorts of other things still. But hey, I've got a house. It's lovely. Now, I haven't read a great deal in June. Now, some of that is because of, the last minute work. So I've been casting a play. And I was painting walls of this in between coming from work and going to rehearsals. And in fact, I'm making this little video in between that time as well. So it's been a bit of a hustle. So not as much read. Also, not as much read just because I've been a bit slower. So we'll start with the first book, and the one that took me the longest. This is The Pillow Book by Shonagon. And it was written in the 10th century, essentially. King Athelstan was King of England when this came out. Our literature was Beowulf. And this is in Japan, the Heian era. I read something from that time called Lady Ochikubo and was amazed that something written that long ago essentially reads like an early 18th century novel. But this reads even more modern than that in some ways, and yet is also stranger and more distant culturally than that. It's this weird thing between the two. It's essentially a selection of lists and anecdotes written by this woman called Shonagon, who was part of the imperial court in Japan, and where it's culturally and just historically really distant and odd and sort of unsettling. Well, not unsettling, just different. There's all the stuff to do with that culture. They really heavily lean on poetry, for example. Not just to be smart, but to be really well thought of, you must have a huge load of poetry in your head. And if you come up with the opposite quotation from some poetry to comment on a certain time or a certain thing that's going on, it's huge kudos points. And what's more than that, if you can kind of rewrite a bit of poetry or give a different spin on it, that's also a really big sort of social buzz to you. It does you really well. And they use poetry for all sorts. The sort of the rules around families and marriages and things are a bit different. And there's so many rules about men and women not being near each other, but also quite expected to go on little love trysts, sneaking into a compound in midnight and speaking with each other and then having sex, and then the next morning you have to send your poetry. So the women wait for their poem, which is always beautifully written on gorgeous paper, often different colours, that links in with the poem and sent with a flower spray or a bit of fruit or a little gift that then links into the poem. And so all of this kind of stuff's a bit strange. But then she just writes about things that she feels, so things that are repulsive at the back of some sewing, or things that are annoying. The fact you could never get a pair of tweezers that pulls out the hair that you want, and there's someone who's got a rogue eyebrow hair that keeps going that way. I completely get that one. Or there's a bit of everything that screams at night is wonderful, except babies, of course. And so it's weirdly really relatable. I often hate the word relatable because I think it's not up to them, the writer, to be relatable to us so much as it's our job to relate to the writing. But there's stuff there that's just so universally human that I get that completely ticks with me. And then stuff that's so completely alien. What? There's this whole anecdote where the joke was that a guy came to court and he was still wearing his lacquered cap. And to do that, you had to read the notes to realise that a lacquered cap was a sign of informality. Whereas I haven't seen a lacquered cap ever, I don't think. Not formal or informally. And so it's always this clash. And then because it's not... it's hard to say whether it was even written for an audience. I think there's this whole thing about sleeves. The women would often sit behind sort of partitions and things. And the way they'd communicate about themselves, they'd have all these colours on their sleeves and they'd let their sleeves sort of hang beneath the partitions. And people would read into the sleeves of who the woman was. So it was a way of showing without showing. And it was sort of performance and private kind of at the same time. And I think this is that. I think there's a sense of she's performing, but she's doing it in a way that seems private. I think that. But at the same time, that means there isn't a structure through the thing. It doesn't build up to anything. It's just all these little bits. And each one is good and interesting and fun. And you should sort of stop and have a little think about each one. And especially if it's one of the more cultural, different ones that you need to try and work out what's it really saying. Or, the really relatable ones. Like, wow, there are really things about humanity that just transcends centuries at this point. And because it's such personal writing of a sort you don't quite get in the West yet. I suppose you've got Augustine's Confessions coming up, but they're not quite there yet, are they? I don't think. I've got them somewhere. But because you have this personal stuff, and the truly personal is universal in many ways, just the jumps across time are amazing. It's a really impressive book, really good book. It's probably not the book to be reading while you're trying to cram in painting rooms and going to work and doing rehearsals and all the rest of it. It's probably a summer holiday book, really. I can imagine reading this by a pool, a limpid pool with some willows and stuff, and it hit even better. It did hit well, but I can imagine it hitting even better then. But it took me a very long time to read because, you come back from rehearsal and you could watch some rubbish on YouTube, or even I'm watching World at War. It's quite good, a very old documentary about World War II, or you could see what Shonagon's up to now. And it's a little harder to pick up, but I did enjoy it. It was really good, and there's that. Next thing I read was Strangers on a Train, a play adaptation by Craig Warner. The reason I'm reading that is because I've been cast in it. I'm Guy. I went to the audition kind of on a whim. I was a bit bored. I was like, I just want to get out of the house. Oh, that's on. Let's go to that. So I went to it and then got cast as Guy, which is one of the strangers on the train, and arguably the main character. He's certainly the one. It's more of a reactive two strangers, Charles Bruno and Guy Haynes. Charles Bruno is the more flashy character. He might be on it more, but Guy Haynes is the one you're supposed to relate to. And my main thought reading it was, oh no, what have I let myself in for? What's more, there's so many lines and so many scenes and so much acting. I'm going to have to act. There's sobbing. There's a lot of sobbing. There's laughing. There's kissing. There's being very tense and trying to let little bits of emotions out. I'm going to have to act, not just act up, which is what I'm used to. But we've rehearsed it for 2 weeks now. Yeah, 2 weeks, and we've just finished blocking it all, and it's been good fun. And so far, I'm keeping up, but I haven't really properly started to learn the lines yet. But there you go. I'm off to that later today, where we're going to work more in detail. So, yeah, acting. Might have to do some. But it's fun. So next thing I read, of course, was the novel Strangers on a Train by Patricia Highsmith. So I'd read this now, having read the play several times, but I've still never seen the film, and the play is supposed to be based on the book. It's interesting how they're different. There are lines in the book that are in the play, and the broad strokes are the same. Two strangers meet on a train, as the title suggests. And one of them's like, oh, I hate my dad. And the other one's like, oh, my wife, I really need to divorce her and she's getting in my way. And the one who hates his dad says, well, let's swap murders. Let's murder them. But if I murder your wife, no one will link me to it. And you'll be somewhere else. And if you murder my dad while I'm away, no one will link me to my dad's murder or you, because we're strangers. No one knows how, there's no sort of causal nexus here. Brilliant. And then my character's like, yeah, great idea, whatever. Clinks his glass on it. And then a few days later, his wife, who he wanted to divorce, is murdered. And he's like, oh, was this that stranger I met? No, can't be. I think it might have been. No, can't be. Might have been. No, can't be. And then he confirms it was. And now, of course, this stranger's saying, and you got to murder my dad. So it's a really good setup. It's the same in both. There are reordered scenes, and actually, I prefer the book's portrayal of my character than the play's. Because in the play, as Guy, I don't. There's not much of me being seduced by Bruno, really. I'm going to have to think of ways of implying it more, because the lines are all very much, go away, Bruno, fuck off, Bruno, not interested in you, Bruno, go away. So I need to think of more of a way of, this is interesting, because in the book he is more seduced, and he does feel more of a connection with Bruno. And to spoil the book, at the end they go out on a boat together, and Bruno jumps off the boat and drowns himself, and then Guy jumps in to try and save him and doesn't. And then Guy thinks, right, well, I must make amends. So he goes to the man who was going to marry his wife after he divorced his wife to own up. And it turns out the guy actually wasn't that bothered in the first place. But the investigators tapped the phone and been listening in, and so now he goes off to be arrested. And I much prefer it. One, I much prefer him being seduced into it more, his dark side coming out a bit more. Because in the play, his dark side doesn't particularly. He maintains his moral centre in the sense of he knows what's right and wrong, but he's just too weak and too cowardly to do much about it. And that's a bit, I don't know, that's a bit rubbish. But in the book, he's more tempted into it, and he goes into his dark side. And then also in the book, he gets more of a comeuppance. In the play, the investigator says, well, I feel sorry for that guy, Haynes. He must have been pressured into killing your dad, and I can't imagine the terrible, thing he's been under. He's probably suffered enough and hurt himself enough over all this. I'm like, nah, stick it to him. Guy is a horrible moral coward. If he come forth earlier on to the police and said, I think this guy's killed my wife because of this conversation we had, and now he wants me to kill his dad, it would have been over, which would have been less good play. But I don't think he's as good a character as the play wants. The play is setting him up to be, and I think the novel is better with it. Of course, there's lots of other things going on, but naturally, playing that role in the play, that's what I'm thinking about as I'm reading the novel. And I very much enjoyed the novel. My first Patricia Highsmith. I might read some of the Ripley books because I remember quite enjoying that film. She was good. Right, last book. I told you there are not many. Haven by Emma Donoghue. I like Emma Donoghue. I haven't actually read The Room, but she wrote Slammikin, which was a sort of... where it read like it was a really interesting 18th century novel that the publishers are then going, put more sort of, jokey London prostitutes and stuff in the front of it. But it's still pretty good. And then their short stories set in the 18th century, including one about Mary Tofts, the woman who gave birth to rabbits. That was good. I've read some others of hers that I can't remember which ones I've read now. So this Haven was set in the 7th century. It's about a nutty old monk who drags two other monks to a bird-infested rock in the middle of the sea near Ireland called Skellig Michael, which is now most famous as Luke Skywalker's hideout in the newer Star Wars films. And the porgs in it are based on puffins which live there. And they set up this monastery where they built these sort of beehivey conical slate housey things. And so this is all about the first monks on there, how they settled in. And it's funny because it's fictionalized, obviously. And these monks, she admits in her little notes at the end, are actually less practical than the real monks. The real monks actually set up a small community of monks there that lived on this island for at least 200 years. So they set up something fairly permanent, or at least fairly long lasting. But these monks, the three of them don't even last a year. By the end of it, two of them have gone away, and the nutty one is left on his own on this island, about to turn it into a beacon of prayer. But he can't even hunt for himself, and he's probably going to starve to death. Very holy. I read this in 2 days. It was the first book I've really read sort of gulp down this month, and I don't think a book is good. I can tell if a book is good by how quickly I read it, but there is a certain satisfaction in gulping down a book. I quite enjoy that. That was nice. And this gave me that feeling. The very simple setup, 3 characters, small setting, constant tension, but also lovely moments where they work together, because there was a young one, an old one, and then the very holy one. And the very holy one I didn't think was this horrible sadist. He wasn't a bad person, or he was just someone who had his eyes on a different prize and missed some of the basics on how to live. And there was a whole bunch of interesting stuff about how you might survive on this place. And recently I visited not a spiky island, but some cliffs called Bempton Cliffs, where I saw puffins, and they were brilliant as puffins and gannets and razorbills and guillemots. And in this book there's also huge auk birds that no longer exist, which are apparently quite good eating. They like eating the puffins as well, and they burn baby puffins for fuel. And if you knew that baby puffins are called pufflets, you can't burn a pufflet. That's not fair. But I visited these rocks, and so they really gave me an idea of what this monk island would have smelt like, if anything else. And the noise of all these birds, and also just what those scalable cliffs with all these birds in it would have been like to climb up and down, as the monks had to in the story. So it was a very enjoyable book. Lingerability, I think there'll be some little bits of it that will linger, but it's it was just nice to just get a book all down me in a nice quick time, and not let it drag out. And that was a nice ending to the month. So we're going into July. Oh, the other thing that happened this month was Ofsted, so that was a couple of days of panic for other people. But when other people panic and then it feeds off on you. So now I've got to get to the end of the school year, which is always a bit manic. So I've got 3 pretty manic weeks. Next weekend is a whole bunch of stuff for my 40th birthday, which is next Monday. And I've started a strange short story collection. I'm getting more of my books out of the boxes, and I'll have even more once these alcoves. I was hoping these alcoves would be up by now, but the guy's been a bit slack. I need to I don't know, sort that out. By the next video, the work will be starting on the kitchen. By video after that, I'll have done, the kitchen will be done, and then I'll have no excuse to be reading and writing and not arithmeticing, not that. But it's been a nice month. It's been all right, and not many books, but I've enjoyed them all, and I'm rehearsing my play, and that's good fun. And I better get off really. So thank you.